And we will begin in our traditional way. So, shalom to everybody. Shalom Aleichem. Peace for everybody. On behalf of Mashaf, the Israeli Agency for International Cooperation, and MATC, Mashaf Center for Agricultural Training, we are really very, very happy to welcome you. And we want to thank you very much for joining us today. My name is Evelyn Rosenthal, and my colleagues, Ora and Shlomo, we will be managing this online meeting today. We are joining from Kibbutz Shvaim. Our center is situated in Kibbutz Shvaim, and we are part of Mashaf. We are one of Mashaf's professional centers. And I have to tell you, we are celebrating this year, actually 2023, we were celebrating 65 years of sharing Israel's agricultural knowledge with countries from the 5 continents under the umbrella of Mashaf. And I am very honored to invite Mr. Eyal David, who is representing Mashaf from in Jerusalem, with his heart in Jerusalem. I want to invite you to greet you on behalf of Mashaf. Eyal, please, the mic is yours.
Thank you very much, Evelyn, and shalom, everyone. It's an honor to be here with you today and to see your interest in what Mashaf, Israel's Agency for International Development Cooperation, has to offer, especially in these difficult times. You know, in times of peace, we host you in Israel. We offer lots of courses on the ground in many, many fields, including agriculture, which is one of our main sectors that we are very much happy to share our knowledge with our friends around the world, and with the center in Shvaim, which Evelyn and Tammy and Ora and the rest are here, are representing. It's our Center for Agriculture. I hope that the current war will end soon, and that you will be able to also leave the screen and come and enjoy our projects and our programs that we offer in Israel, and so that you can experience in your own eyes and see in your own eyes how we made the desert bloom and what we can offer. With me today also in this group, we have 2 cadets, diplomatic cadets, that are doing their first steps in diplomacy. They are here, Jonathan and Ilan, and we want them to see how what we do in these times, and these online courses are one thing that we are doing, and I'm very happy to see people from around the world. I will tell you personally that I just got back from 5 years service in Africa. I was the deputy ambassador in Kenya, in East Africa, and the 2 last years I was the deputy head of mission in Morocco, in north of the continent. So to our friends in the West, I hope to arrive there. But till then, I hope to see you with us in Israel. I invite you all to come and at first to see what our embassies has to offer. You know, in every country, all the programs that Mashav and the other agencies have to offer, they are published by the embassy. So please follow the website of the embassy, the social media, also of AMTC, the center in Shvaim, and so that you can see the different lectures and then the different programs on the ground. And later on, you will be able to apply for courses, and that we can see you here with us face to face. So good luck, and I send you my warm wishes from Jerusalem. Bye-bye, and thank you, Evelyn.
Thank you, Eyal. Thank you very much. And yeah, we hope you will be able to come soon to Israel. Okay, before I will present you our our lecturer of today, and we go to the lecture, we would like to show you a very short video about Mashav and Mashav's activities. So please, Ora, Shlomo.
Mashav, Israel's Agency for International Development Cooperation, was launched in 1958, only 10 years after the State of Israel gained its independence. Mashav was established with the aim of sharing Israeli know-how, innovation, and technologies with developing countries to achieve sustainable development and transformation within their own societies. Mashav's ultimate goal is to bring change, hope, and opportunity for everyone, sharing knowledge and ideas with all. Mashav has been active in 140 countries worldwide, training more than 300,000 people in a broad variety of fields. MATC, Mashav Agricultural Training Center, is responsible for international agricultural cooperation to ensure food security and sustainable agricultural development. METC, Mashav Educational Training Center, focuses on education at all levels, including education for sustainable development, teachers training, and curriculum development, programs for youth at risk, education for science and technology, young leadership, and a comprehensive drug control strategy. MCTC, Mashav Carmel Training Center, is dedicated to the advancement of women's leadership, innovation and entrepreneurship, gender equality, and women's empowerment. Mashav initiates active dialogues with fellow nations and international organizations, creating partnerships for development all around the world. We place people at the heart of development. We invest efforts in our human capacity building, working with local stakeholders and communities to develop innovative and creative solutions to overcome pressing development challenges. In alignment with the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda, we are committed to continue empowering fellow nations in the fight against poverty and inequality, to overcome development challenges, and achieve a better future for all.
Thank you. So, welcome to those who just arrived. I have to tell you, we are 59 people here in the meeting. So, shalom to everybody again. Little information before we begin. We are recording this meeting, so don't worry, okay? We will not allow everybody to record by himself. So you will find the video in our YouTube page. We will share afterwards the link for the YouTube page, so don't worry. And there you will be able to find all our open lectures. For questions, please use the chat. Okay, we will try to answer the questions at the end of the lecture. And here we go. So I am very proud to host our dear colleague, Ms. Tammy Erann Soussan. Tammy has a rich and diverse background. She studied beekeeping at the Faculty of Agriculture of the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, also studied gender and development in the Geneva Graduate Institute, has a master's degree in public policy, specializing in sustainable development and food security. She joined Mashav something like 20 years ago and specialized on agricultural extension, has served as a field coordinator of a Mashav project in Senegal, and she is the head of MATC's French department, and today she will share with us some of her knowledge she did achieve along those 20 years dealing with international development. So it's now my pleasure to invite Tammy to introduce us to this interesting topic, integrating gender into agricultural development programs. Tammy, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Evelyn, and thank you to everyone who is here today and together with us. I'm going to share my screen. Nope, I need to be allowed to share it.
There
Okay,
you are.
yes. Okay, here we go. And going like this. Why is it not? Okay, and just one more click that I need to do. Okay, is it showing okay?
Fine.
It's okay?
It's fine. It's fine.
Okay, so here we go. So today I'm going to divide this lecture into 3 parts. The first one, we're going to talk about what is gender, because the term gender in development is thrown around a lot. And anyone who is working in gender in development and agricultural development has heard the term, has used the term maybe, but maybe many of us do not know the full or the real meaning of the term. So today we're going to talk about what gender is, the different terminology that we use in development when it comes to gender. And the second part, we're going to talk about why. Why is it important to integrate gender into agricultural development? Okay, and the reasons are many, but we're going to talk about some of them. And then finally, we're going to take a very brief look at some of the ways we can or should integrate gender into development, into agricultural development. Time is too short for us to really do an in-depth learning on it. And I hope that we will have a future activity and that you will join us maybe for a future activity where we will go into further depth on how to do it. But today we're just going to look at it in a brief way. So here we go. When we talk about gender, one of the main terms is the interchangeability, or what seems to be the interchangeability in use of sex versus gender. And so what is sex and what is gender? So normally in a classroom, I would ask you this question, I would get your answers, but since we're in a short lecture, I'm just going to go ahead and tell you. So when we talk about sex, it refers only to the biological differences between males and females. And it means that we all have similar structure, but we also have some differences. For example, different genitals or different levels and types of hormones in our body. And when we say the word sex, we're talking about whether you are a female or male, a human being who is a male human being, a female human being. It refers to those physical differences. We are different because we do have different bodies. Women can have babies, and men, well, as of right now, men can only assist in the creation of those babies. So that is for sex. And gender. Gender is not the biological difference between men and women. Gender is cultural, and it describes the differences that men and women play in our society. And these roles are not the same all over the world, but most cultures do have specific roles for men and other roles for women. So here's the definition of gender according to the World Health Organization, and that is that gender refers to the characteristics of women, men, girls, and boys that are socially constructed. This includes norms, behaviors, roles associated with being a woman, a man, a girl, or a boy, as well as the relationships between them. And as a social construct, gender varies from society to society, and also it can change over time. Let me ask you this, and please use the chat, everybody. A real woman is. Complete the sentence with 1, maybe maximum 2 words. A real woman to you, or in your society, a real woman is. Use the chat, please. I want to see responses coming in on the chat. I'll give you a few seconds for that. Come on, guys, don't be shy. What is a real woman? Mm. Go on. Okay. Okay, great. Of course, my next question is, what is a real man? Please, one word, 2 words, the word that to you most describes what a real man is. Go ahead in the chat.
Oh, shall we read this? Fulfill the
Okay,
power.
we'll read it in a
Yes.
moment. I cannot see it. I can't for the time being, but okay, in a moment. Okay, so let me ask you this. Is this what you think? Yeah? Or maybe this is what you imagined. Maybe not. I don't know. But this, what you see here in this image, you see King Louis XIV of France, who was very famous for his high-heeled shoes, his leggings, his tights, okay, the wig he wore. And this was the epitome of being a man in the early 18th century in France. Would you walk around like this, any of you, in the streets of your hometown? And this is Louis XIV's court. And this is how all of the men of his time dressed. And to them, this was the essence of being a fashionable, well-groomed, honorable man. Okay, let's talk about this a little bit, okay? Let's talk a little bit about feminine and masculine stereotypes. Can Shlomo or Evelyn, can someone read to me what a real woman is? Well, no, let's start with a real man. What is a real man?
A real man is an adult man.
Okay.
With leadership and order.
He's a leader.
Naturally calm, though they have a lot of problems on their mind. a provider.
A provider.
Well, maybe this is strong.
Strong. Okay.
Strong,
all right.
Yes.
So let's say that in most places these are the more or less the answers that we get. And a man is self-confident, a man is courageous, rational, competitive, strong, ambitious, okay, chivalrous. Okay. Evelyn, what is a real woman?
One who accepts her strengths and limitations, but has the dignified, a provider, care for his family, for her family, work at farm for family feeding, responsible. Ah, that's nice. A real woman is an adult female person. Free and independent. Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Protector.
Okay. So for most people, they define the man as being the protector, but here you see the difference between one society and another, or between the opinions of individuals. Okay, so let's see. Women are usually characterized as being more emotional, being merciful, soft, sensitive, helpful, polite, flexible. Okay. Do you agree that this is more or less the stereotypes that are accepted for men and women? She's pleasant as well. So he is a true gentleman, and she, of course, is a lady. And the gender norms that we are used to, they reinforce certain stereotypes. For example, that women are more nurturing, and that men are stronger, and just a moment, a second, hold on. Okay, or that women act more on emotion than on reason, especially compared to men. So the question is, and then come with me to this, where I'm bringing you, please. Okay, so if she is weak and if she acts on emotion rather than reason, is it not normal? Okay, I say normal like this. Okay, is it not normal that she cannot be entrusted with a leadership role because under stress she will react with emotion rather than reason, right? Or let's take it to somewhere a little bit nicer. If she is gentle, helpful, very flexible, available, is it not normal that she would choose to be a kindergarten teacher or maybe a secretary or a nurse? Is that right? Okay, so that's fine. What about him? What career is suitable for someone who is strong and ambitious, courageous and rational? Maybe he is well suited to be a CEO of a company, or maybe president. Maybe he is suited to be president. And so in that way, we see that these stereotypes define how we look at men and women and the roles that they should be taking upon themselves in society. Now, some would say that the image of women as being more moral, pure, good is to the woman's advantage. In fact, in many cases, it means that delicate flowers that we are admired, and then we are placed on a pedestal. Do you know this? Have you experienced this? Have you seen it happen? But beware, because a pedestal is a precarious place to be, and it requires incredibly good balance. For example, when a woman must choose between being a mother and having a career, and when she is expected to perform the unpaid housekeeping roles, including childcare, cooking, cleaning, including dealing with the mother-in-law. You know this one? The mother-in-law. So I'm just joking. I love my mother-in-law. I really do. But all of this together makes it very, very difficult, because what happens when there are too many demands that need to be balanced? You know what can happen? Yeah. Ouch. In this case, it becomes clear that certain gender norms are not harmless, imagined things, but rather the cause of much adversity and pain. So then you might say, okay, but women they're born like that. They are born as nurturers, naturally, with these attributes. So it is our fate, or it is your fate if you're a man saying that to a woman, or the woman saying it to herself. It is our fate, and there's nothing we can do. Isn't that true, that sometimes that's what people say? So I'd like to go back to the definition of gender and to emphasize a few points. Gender refers to the characteristics that are socially constructed, and this includes norms, behaviors, and roles associated with being a man or a woman. And these, as they are constructed, they can be deconstructed, they can change over time. And in that case, it's very important for us to realize this, okay, that some of the things that we take as a given truth might not be a given truth. It is just something that has been constructed in our society over time. And the word gender, it encompasses like how we look at masculinity or femininity, things like virility, what is a male model, female model, a father figure, feminism, mother nature, an alpha male, cooperation, control. How about this? Have you ever heard the term a woman's place? A woman's place is a woman should know her place, things like that. These are social constructs, okay? It is not something that we are born with, okay? And all of these together, they compose what our gender identity is. And when we talk about gender identity, there are two aspects to it. There's the community, social aspect of it, and of course, there's the individual aspect of it. How a gender identity is how a person perceives himself or herself, a person's understanding and experience of themselves and their roles within society. It is their inner sense of who they are supposed to be and how they want to interact with society and the world. So while a person can only change their sex through surgery, and even then, the DNA and the chromosomes are not changeable, their gender is more variable and based on how they themselves identify. And sometimes, although most of the time the person's gender identity is aligned with their sex, it's not always the truth. It's not always like that, especially in today's world where we understand more and more that it's not a simple binary world, and there are people who identify outside of what we traditionally identified as being man or woman, being male and female. Okay, and we're not going to expand on that today because it doesn't have to do with agriculture. It doesn't have to do with agricultural development, but it's something that we should be aware of. So what's happening here? What is the process? What's going on? And then what is happening is that from the moment you are born, you are told and you are given a very clear message of what you are allowed, what you are supposed, what you are encouraged, what you are expected to do or to be. Okay, and look at these photos, and you can see. Look at the girl is playing with dolls. She is expected to develop her nurturing side, okay? And the boy is playing with a ball, and he is going to be a team player, and he's always going to be also very competitive, and he's also going to be more confident in himself, okay? So all of these things start in early childhood. We are dressed in a certain way, for example, pink for girls and blue for boys. I don't know if it's the same in your culture, but that is what it is like in a lot of Western cultures. They're given very certain toys, you know, cars for boys, dolls for girls. And we grow up in the roles that our society expects from us. And we are told different things also, depending on whether or not we are a boy or a girl. For example, to girls, we usually say, "Oh, you are so pretty," or "What a beautiful dress you have." And to boys, we say, "Oh, you are so smart, you are so strong." Okay. A girl is often expected to help in the house, help her mother. Boys, on the other hand, are allowed and maybe even encouraged to run wild or climb trees. In many societies, we don't see it in a positive way. If a boy cries, we say, "Boys don't cry. Be a man." Right? So all of this together, all of this process that is happening from the moment you are born, it's called socialization, and it intensifies throughout our teenage years. And it's a process that we emerge on the other side of this process as adults in society, ready to take on our intended roles. Okay? And so it's not really nature, it's more nurture. And what happens, this process has a double effect. So first of all, as I said, we learn our roles well. And because what happens in a society when children don't conform to the appropriate gender role of their culture, then they face negative sanctions, and they are criticized or bullied or marginalized or even rejected by their peers. And when a man or a woman does not react as society expected, they are also sanctioned, punished, rejected, not promoted, isolated, or so on. So that's the first thing. So the first thing is that we learn our roles through this process. And the second thing is that it cements certain prejudices inside the society, and such as like the general image of masculine being stronger than the feminine, for example. Okay, so these gender roles, what are they? They are the roles that focus on the expectations that the society has for men and women. Okay, and they focus on what when women and men do, and the difference that they have in the access and control over resources that is determined. We're going to talk about this in a moment. And then eventually they spell out the power relations between women and men. And more often than not, they reveal also the underprivileged status of women in various sectors. I'll tell you about this in a moment, okay? So what we see, that one thing almost all human societies have in common, And I think you can guess what I'm about to say. Inequality. Inequality and disparities between men and women in societies. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what this, how this happens. I think we touched on it on a bit in describing what gender means and what the different gender roles are. But here's something that I'd like to share with you about Israel, for example, because Israel is considered, it's an OECD country. It's considered a very developed country. I don't like the terminology developing, but okay, let's just say it is considered a very developed country. This is a saying in Hebrew that I'm sharing with you, and it's Ba'al Hame'ah u Ba'al Hade'ah. It means the person who possesses the $100 bill or the money possesses the opinion. And I think that you will agree with me that this is something that is common almost everywhere in the world. So basically, what does it mean? It means that if you have the economic power, you also have the decision-making power. In Israel, the example I'm going to give you is that even though we're supposed to be an egalitarian society, and even though according to the law ensures equality, supposedly, but the practice doesn't always go according to the law. And in Israel, calculated on a global basis, women earn 32% less than men in terms of global wages. I'll explain what that means, okay? It's not exactly 32%, but that's like in a global way, okay? Much of the discrepancy here is due to the fact that men work more hours. But one of the reasons men work more hours is because women take upon themselves to leave the workplace on time to be home for the children, either to pick them up from the daycare or to be home for them when they arrive from school. So women in general are working less hours. Okay, so that's logical. You would say, okay, that's logical. It explains a lot of the difference. So, okay, the second explanation is that the average wages in women-dominated sectors, such as caregiving and education, administration. Remember when we talked about what a woman should choose as a career? Well, yeah, these careers, unfortunately, are less well paid than other careers. Okay, let's be honest. It's it's a woman-dominated sector field, education, for example, so it pays less than other sectors. Okay, so that's another explanation. I'll give you a third explanation. There are far fewer women in the highest paid management positions. So, okay, so in the highest management, we are more men and they are better paid. And the fourth one is that oftentimes women are ignored for pay increases. You know, I think that one of the descriptions that Evelyn read out that you gave, I don't know who it was, but what someone gave is that men are providers. And yes, we do expect men to be providers, but today also women are providers. So when you are working in a workplace and you have a boss, especially if he is a man boss, and he has two workers, he might see the man employee as a head of a household who is a provider. And he might see the woman employee as someone who's bringing in a second salary. And therefore, oftentimes men are earning salary increases on this basis. Okay, so that's on a global basis, but let's ask for on an hourly wage, the same job, the same position, the same everything, men and women. Is it not equal? And the answer is, unfortunately, no, it's not equal. There's still a 16% pay gap between men and women in Israel. So this is something that you need we need to understand. And when you try to understand why is there this pay gap, all of the logical explanations that I gave you, they don't exist. It's just there. It's just somehow they're being paid more. So, okay. So let's go on and talk about what is happening here. We are stuck in the gender cycle. What happened is that gender roles are socially determined from birth. These gender roles determine the division of labor. The work is then evaluated differently depending on who is doing it. And then it determines differential access to resources, to decision-making power, to services, and to advantages. And then all of this value that is attributed to the work and the access to decision-making power reinforce the existing relations and the existing gender roles, and the cycle goes on and on, over and over again. Okay. This is a little bit of the gender. What is gender, and some of the definitions regarding gender. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat, because we will come back to them. And if we don't have time during the lecture, then I will try to answer you like in so put your mail if you don't at the end of the lecture, okay? So let's talk about a short history of women in and development. Women in development, women and development, okay? Because people who are working in development realize that there are these discrepancies, there are these disparities, there is a problem. Women are not participating as fully as they should be in the process. And attempts were made to address that, and these attempts they manifested themselves by different approaches in development to the problems of women's participation and addressing women in development. Hold on a second. Sorry. Okay, so in the 60s. The first approach that was practiced was called Women in Development. And this was an approach to development that called for the treatment of women's problems in development projects. Okay, and it endorses the strengthening of women's awareness and capacities with a view to enabling women to examine their own situation and act to correct the disadvantaged position. Okay, and the approach examined how to better integrate women into existing development initiatives with a simple goal of increasing women's productivity and earning. And so there was a problem with this approach, that it actually accepted the existing social structures in the recipient country or community, and didn't actually speak to the root of the problem that women were actually facing, the problems that women were actually facing, only to the different apparencies of women not being included in the process. Okay, so a lot of these programs were actually too focused on welfare system, and the recipients, the women, were actually very passive in these development programs. And it was actually called, I think today we look at it and we say it's kind of like a home economics approach, and it wasn't very successful, okay? So in the 1970s, there was a kind of a change, and now we don't want to talk about women in development, we want to talk about women and development. So if there was a change of thinking here. So if the earlier thinking saw the development as a means to advance women, now this new approach says that development can only happen through women's participation. In other words, there's not this development that's happening and women are going to like ride the wave. No, now in order for development to happen, women must participate. Okay, so this is a change of thinking. So the new idea suggested that that women shouldn't be passive anymore. They have to be actively involved. And in fact, they took the step even further, saying, well, actually, they have a problem being involved when they are in these programs together with the men. So we need to have a whole other projects and programs that are only designed for women. Okay, this is what's going to enable them to participate fully. So this is actually like, it was a good idea, and this actually was the first time that all the countries through the UN started implementing real programs for women's empowerment. But the problem with this approach was that it it did still ignore the larger social processes that affected women's lives, okay, and their roles. And the approach didn't address the root causes of gender inequalities. And the biggest problem with the approach was that it alienated a lot of the men who felt that they were either not going to participate, they're not going to cooperate, and sometimes even they felt that they were resentful of these projects and programs. And so a lot of these programs actually didn't understand what was happening in the society and in the community. And there was actually sabotage of some of them. Okay. So this went on from the 1970s into the mid 1980s. And in the 1980s, there was once again a rethinking, and now we have the approach that is used most even today, and we call that the gender and development approach. And this approach says the following. It says that we need to develop a broader view, and we need to focus more on the relationships of men and women in the family, in the community, and how men and women participate in development processes, rather than focusing strictly on women's issues. Okay. And so unlike the United Household model, all of a sudden the gender and development model or approach says, look, up until now, every time we went out to collect data, we were talking about this household or that household, okay? And in fact, the household is an arena for negotiation, cooperation, conflict. It isn't a united unit, okay? The men there and the women there may have different needs, different desires, different approaches and feelings. So that's something that needs to be taken into account. Okay, so basically that's what the gender and development does, and that's what we work with today. Okay, just to let you know, so instead of the women being the center of attention on their own, it's the relationship of men and women in the society. Instead of the problem being described as women's exclusion, it's the inequality that exists, and the unequitable division that impedes women from full participation. Okay, the objective is, instead of just integrating women into development processes, is to have a good development process that allows women and men to participate in it equally and to take roles as decision makers. So this is more or less what we are doing today. Now, the gender and development actually says that we need to look at women's and men's roles. We need to look at women and men's needs, and they are different. So we divide the roles of men and women into three types of roles when we talk about development. We talk about the reproductive role, the productive role, and the community management role. So, for example, the reproductive role is everything related to birth, care of children, domestic tasks, supporting the workforce, care given to the elderly. Reproductive activities are also the basic for economic and productive development in societies, like everything having to do with like food preparation, health-related activities, and so on. But these are also all of these activities are ones that are not remunerated, okay? So they're not for money. So then we have the productive roles, and the productive roles are in exchange for income. And that means that anything having to do with market, even domestic work, but if it only has an attributed value, okay? And productive activities are remunerative and income generating. And then, of course, we have the community and political. And here also we see like a difference between men and women, of course. For women, like, for example, the management of collective resources, water, education, health is often voluntary work. And for men, it's often political roles that are paid. Or if it's not paid, then it gives them a lot of power, or at least a lot of prestige. And So, but these roles, the community roles, can also include voluntary contributions to social and community life, cultural activities, festivals, rights, elderly care, and so on. So when we look at the different types of roles in the society and we see where women and men differ, okay, and then we also look to see where women can be identified and women's empowerment can be. If it's the empowerment of women is defined as promoting women's sense of self-worth, their ability to determine their own choices, and their right to influence social change for themselves and also for others. And it's not only like equal capacities in education and health and equal access to resource and opportunities like land and employment, but also the ability to use these rights and these capabilities to make choices and strategic decisions. In other words, to take on leadership opportunities and participation in decision making. Okay, here's a little cartoon that I really like. You have the development worker coming into the community, and he's sitting there with the men to discuss a new project that they want to introduce on the water management. And the only people who are attending are the village men. And says, okay, the women, where are they? You ask where they are. Well, they are too busy to attend the discussion. So yeah, so let's talk about now the needs. We talked about the roles, and now let's talk about gender needs. Okay, so needs are divided into two types of needs. The practical needs, in other words, needs that have to do with the living conditions, like access to healthcare or housing or income. And usually these needs, these practical needs, they can alleviate one's conditions of life, but they don't usually change socially accepted roles. And on the other hand, we have strategic needs, and then they stem from a subordinate position. And it could be, for example, let me give you an example. These could be needs that women identify arising from their position, their subordinate position, like the division of labor, power structure and control. It's, you know, it could be linked to civil rights, reproductive rights, family planning, domestic violence. It could be for example, let's use the example of this water project that we want to do. So let's say if we want to say that, like, for example, a practical need could be bringing the water source closer to the village, and so that they can save time and labor. That could be a practical need. A strategic need could be, for example, being the head of the water user association of the village, being in charge of the water distribution, if there is if water is paid for, also to be the one who collects or to decide on the tariff, and or to be the one who is the technician who knows how to fix the water pump if something goes wrong. All of these things can be the strategic needs, and they would give the woman who participates a position of control and an active part in the decision making. Okay, another term that we use a lot is gender sensitivity, and it's an open term. It's a term that just means being open, being aware of the needs of women, men, girls, and boys, and how these needs impact the interactions. So, and this is very important. Okay, we finished the first part of talking about gender roles. Okay, now I'd like to go to the next one and talk about why. Why should we integrate gender considerations into agricultural development projects, and why is it important? Well, the answer is that because we cannot address poverty and hunger without addressing gender inequality and the needs of women in our society. And we cannot address poverty and hunger without addressing agriculture. So in order to address poverty and hunger, again, we need to address both agricultural development and gender. The two are intertwined. And also, just to give you a short answer, is that we wish to live in a better world, a world with equality, social justice, and in those terms, it is very important also to look at what is happening in the field of gender. Okay, a new report finds that economic and social discrimination against women is costing, for example, Africa more than $100 billion a year. So it's also a practical consideration. If this inequality or this discrimination is costing us money, then we should stop it, right? It's costing the world money. It's costing money. Okay, and the UN. The UNDP, the UN Development Program, argues that closing the gender gap would also be like a huge profit, a huge benefit for the whole continent's economic and social prospects. Okay, so this is something that we need to know and to consider. Let me just see what we're doing with time. Sorry about that. Yes, okay, we're good. Okay, so when we talk about development, I hope you know the Sustainable Development Goals. I'll just say what they are. In the year 2000, the whole world united together to vote on 8 Millennium Development Goals that they were from the year 2000 to the year 2015, that everybody, all countries, donor countries, beneficiary countries, medium country, everybody agreed to unite together and try to work together to make the world's development more productive, more efficient, and more egalitarian. So there were the 8 development goals, Millennium Development Goals. And in 2015, which was the time that we were supposed to achieve these goals, and of course we didn't achieve the goals, even though some headway was made, especially in the fields of education and in the fight against malaria. But still, we did not achieve these goals. And in 2015, the world reunited one more time and voted upon 17 sustainable development goals. So we have these 17 sustainable development goals that include the elimination of poverty, end of hunger, and good health and well-being, education for all, gender equality, clean water and sanitation. I'm not going to read all of them to you, but the idea of the sustainable development goals, as opposed to the millennium ones, is a recognition that the goals are interacting very much one with the other, and that a lot of thought and consideration needs to be given to other issues such as the environment and the urban as opposed to rural, etc. So things like industry and biodiversity and the environment were included in the Sustainable Development Goals. Okay, so goal number 5 is the gender equality goal. And our mission in general is for men and women to benefit equally from development, actually. Everybody needs to enjoy the development process and enjoy it and benefit from it. And the gender equality goal is one that actually has a positive multiplier effect for a range of other key development goals, including poverty reduction, eradication of hunger, child well-being, education, health, nutrition. So that's why it's a very, very important goal. And so it has also 9 targets, I would say, let's say 9 targets. And the important things to know about about this goal is that it's to end the gender disparities, eliminate violence against women and girls, okay, eliminate early and forced marriages, secure equal participation and opportunities for leadership, and universal access to sexual and reproductive rights. Okay, so that's the main thing, but it comes back to all of these other goals and is related to them, and that's why it is so important. Okay, another reason that it is so important is that 50% of farmers in developing countries are women, and 70% of economically active women in the least developing countries work in agriculture. And 90% of the agricultural processing, such as threshing, drying, peeling, all of the processing work, 90% of it is done by women. 60% of the marketing is done by women, and 80% of the workforce for transport and storage is provided by women. In Southeast Asia, 90% of rice labor is performed by women. And yet, even with all of this contribution and participation on this part of women, women perform about 2/3 of the world's work, but earn only 10% of the world's income overall. And we call this the feminization of poverty. Let me give you some other statistics. In sub-Saharan Africa, for example, women comprise only 20% of all the total landholders, but they own only 1% of the land. Now, also the men don't own all that much, but they own at least 10 or 20 times more than the women in terms of acreage or hectares, okay? Women receive only 5% of all agricultural extension services worldwide, and women work an average of 20 hours more than men per week. Women receive less than 10% of available credit compared to male smallholders. Women smallholders receive less than 10% of available credit. And 2/3 of the illiterate people in the world are women. 50% of women in Africa, or there are some say that 50%, some say today 1 in 3 women in Africa are anemic. And the maternal mortality in sub-Saharan Africa is the highest in the world. And yet 30% of households are headed by women. So these are some things that when we look at this together, they're not painting a very nice picture for us in terms of for us, I mean us, humanity, society. Okay, there are many gender-based disparities in developing countries, little control over or access to resources, insufficient assets or income to even exit poverty, fewer benefits or protections under customary statutory legal systems, lack of decision-making authority, greater time burdens, social isolation, threats or acts of violence, and greater vulnerability to climate change. Okay, when it comes to climate change, I just want to say a few words, a very few words, that women make up 20 million of the 26 million people estimated to have been displaced by climate change between the years 2012 and 2015. Just, okay, women are often hit much harder during disasters. If we look at the Bangladesh cyclone of 1991, if we talk about the Sri Lanka tsunami in 2004, if we talk about all natural disasters, women are 5 times more likely to die than men. Sometimes it's because they don't know how to swim, they're not as strong, or they didn't receive prior warning of the event. They weren't forewarned. So this is something that also we need to take into account. Also, climate change accounts for a lot of armed conflict. And in armed conflict, a lot of times it's women who suffer the most. Okay, and yet, despite all of the adversity, and in spite of these disparities, in spite of the difficulties, women provide food and nutrition security to their families. And it has been proven time and time again that women, relative to men, spend more on food for the family, and women's incomes are more strongly associated with child health and nutrition. This is something from the FAO 2020 State of the Food and Agriculture in the World report. So this is, and it's very interesting. An increase, okay, of $10 in a woman's income achieves the same improvements in children's nutrition and health as an increase to a man's income of $110. Why this happens? Well, we have some ideas of why this happens, but it is because women use that money to put it back into the children's health and nutrition so much more than the men do. So why should we integrate gender into agricultural development projects? Because gender norms are a major constraint to productivity. So if we do integrate gender, we can increase sustainability by at least 16%. We can increase yields by 20 to 30%, and we can reduce hunger in the world 12 to 17%. So I think that's reason enough, right? I hope I convinced you. Another thing that we should know is that the projects that do fail to anticipate the unique dimensions of women's poverty or to identify the constraints to women's full participation will most likely fail to reach their objectives. So if you are a project manager, if you are a program manager, if you are in a position of decision making, you should know this, that it is very, very important, and it can help you achieve your project objectives. Okay. So now let's spend the next, we have a little bit over 10 minutes to talk about how we should do it. And again, okay, and the way we do it is, first of all, we need to know what are the constraints for women in agriculture. So we said that gender norms do lead to inequality in the distribution of resources, and this comes mostly it manifests itself in many ways. So first of all, in land, and poor access to land is often the most important constraint, limiting ability of women to benefit from agricultural development. And many countries have reformed land laws or are in the process of reforming land laws and passed more laws on gender equality. I'm just going to give a couple of examples. In 2012, Tanzania and the Philippines amended land laws to include explicit guarantees for women to own full land, also inherit from male heirs, and also buy or sell land without requiring consent from a male parent, let's say. Unfortunately, in many other places, customary law prevails and is almost always dominated by men. In Ghana and Senegal, for example, land policies grant customary land authorities a very high degree of power in making decisions about land allocation. So even when the statutory law, the law of the land, the official law, forbids any kind of discrimination, a lot of times the traditional, customary organization it perpetuates patriarchal land allocation practices, unfortunately. Okay, so some other examples, like in Bolivia and Nicaragua, despite very positive wording in land titles and legislation regarding equal rights for men and women, so the resistance from those who are actually charged with implementing the program led to a lot of land being allocated eventually to men rather to women. So all of these mechanisms need to be reinforced. We'll talk about that a little bit if we have some more time. Okay, the second one, of course, is water and inputs, seeds and fertilizers, new varieties and technologies, extension, labor, credit, markets, and social capital. Okay, I'm going to talk just about a few of them because time doesn't allow us to cover all of them, but I'll give you some examples. Okay, so what are some of the strategies that we should employ? So for land, there are weak property and contractual rights to land, both statutory and customary. So some of the possible strategies would be, first of all, to identify the tenure status at the onset of the project. And once you know what you're dealing with, then you will know. For example, if the beneficiaries of your program are not the owners of the land, they will be hesitant to invest in the land, of course. So you have to think about that. You have to identify the status of the tenure of the beneficiaries of the project, and if there's something you can do about it or not. If you can use your position as somebody who's bringing in a development project, maybe try to strengthen the property and contractual rights of that community. Also, to conduct legal literacy campaigns. So sometimes it's just a question of not going through the necessary process to register the land. And sometimes it has to do with people being illiterate or not having the level of legal literacy to be able to complete the process and the forms. Also, trying to apply a low-cost, rapid, and transparent land certification process. That is something that has been done in Ethiopia, for example, and has shown excellent results. Also, to ensure that when there are land administration committees, like local ones, because we talk a lot about decentralization, so ensure that there is at least hopefully more, one woman member in land administration committees who is looking out for some of the rights of women in land allocation. Okay, when it comes to water, women are the main users of water, but often have restricted rights or difficulty to access it. And so, and a lot of the larger irrigation projects in the past, they typically target male farmers, not on purpose, but only because they are more willing to, or more organized, or more in the forefront. So one of the some of the key strategies, of course, would be like to increase women's water rights, obviously, but also to put in some small-scale water management technologies, such as irrigation technologies and solar pumping systems, and to create water users associations that will manage the water and make sure that women are part of these associations. Another thing would be to give to teach women how to not only use drip irrigation, but also to fix small problems or even big problems in the water pump and other machinery. So that would be like another one that we talked about was labor, and the main constraints are, of course, the relatively low productivity that exists in developing countries and the lack of time, because women have too many competing tasks. And in the picture above, you see a woman who is watering her field with watering cans. So obviously she's going back and forth, and it's going to take her a very long time, maybe all day, to water her field. So on the bottom picture, you see an drip irrigation system. And of course, that is, to me, that's one of the major strategies. And of course, Israel is very strong when it comes to drip irrigation, and is something that I worked with in Senegal for between 2013 and 2016. And I can tell you that it works. So this is something that I think that every agricultural project that can, and where it is appropriate, should try and integrate drip irrigation for women. Okay, another problem, another constraint is the inputs, the access to inputs and technologies. And a lot of times it's not just the access itself or the cost. A lot of times it's also whether they have the information, women have the information, and how to use the information. And also that a lot of times the technologies don't take into account women's needs or their preferences. So here, what you have here is an example. Using a wheelbarrow, for example, can decrease the time spent on transport by about 60%. So that's very significant. But if the woman can't manipulate the wheelbarrow because it's too big and too heavy and too cumbersome for her, then it's not going to help her. So it needs to be designed in a way, even simple technologies need to be designed in a way that women can use them. For example, shorter hose or longer hose, bags of fertilizers that are not as heavy, and so on. Okay, here's an example from Rwanda. So in a program on participatory selection of beans, the varieties that the women farmers selected, they produced 38% over the breeder selected varieties. Okay, and why was that? And that is because the women in Rwanda, they on their own, they test and they try out anywhere up to 100 varieties in a lifetime. So they know their varieties, and so they already had cultivated their own knowledge and their own expertise on the subject. And so the program used that and included them in the decision making and came with 38% better results. Okay, another main constraint is in extension. Remember earlier I told you that women worldwide only benefit from about 5% of total extension, and it's a huge problem. The knowledge has to come to women, and so some of the key strategies is this. First of all, we need to have more female extension workers. We need to train the male extension workers how to work with women. A lot of times the extension workers come to the farm and they give the information to the husband. But a lot of times the information, the person who is actually executing the work on this particular technique or in this particular field or on this particular cultivar is a woman. So and then she's getting the information secondhand from her husband. So that's not good. So the male extension agents need to work with the women, and they need to know how to give them the information in a way that they can also understand it. If in places where the women are illiterate, for example, the messages need to be made easier to understand. And farmer field schools and experiential learning, ICTs. And today, really, this is like the biggest answer of all. And I regret I meant to put it in here and I didn't, but that's the smartphone. The access to digital information is opening the world also to women. So okay, here's just, this is a little bit old, but just to let you know, just to give you an example, okay? So in the extension staff in Ethiopia and Ghana and India, this is from 2012. So I said it's a bit old. I'm not, but it's just to let you know, to show you the difference 10 years ago, what the extension staff looked like. I have to find new information on that. I will. I promise for my next lecture. Okay, and here, for example, is the access to agricultural extension and livestock services in India, just as an example. And you see women versus men and the difference. Okay, so the important thing is, and there are so many strategies, and the important thing is to know that gender needs to be mainstreamed, and this is a very important term, mainstreaming. Gender mainstreaming is an approach to policy making that takes into account both women's and men's interest and concern in all levels and at all stages of the program. Okay, and we call that gender mainstreaming. Okay, and I will tell you what gender mainstreaming, first of all, is not about. Okay, it's not about add some women and stir. Add some women, stir. No, it's not. Okay, it needs to be about ensuring the equal participation of women and men in decision making or in different activities. Okay, it's also not about including an introductory paragraph in your proposed program saying we are going to ensure 50% women beneficiaries. Okay, so maybe ensuring 50% women beneficiaries, that might be a good start. I'm not saying it isn't. It could be a good step, but let's say you're coming in now with a project on agricultural entrepreneurship, and you go into a community and of course they say, yes, we want it. Okay, well, do these women have the time to be entrepreneurs? And if yes, if the answer is no, then okay, why don't they have the time? Do they have a lot of tasks that they are responsible for? Is there someone else who can take the tasks for them? Okay, maybe yes. So let's say someone else is going to take the responsibility for these women's tasks in order to enable them to participate in your program and to be an entrepreneur. Okay, and let's say the program goes very well and they succeed and now they're generating income. Do they have control over their income? Did you check before you implemented this program? Let's say the income is increased, but maybe it's their father or their husband who has control over this additional income. And so now the question to ask is, did you improve their lives? Did you give them more empowerment? Did you give them more decision making? Did you change their status? Did you help them? Are they benefiting from development or not? And that's why the gender mainstreaming is so important. And now please put on your gender glasses and we're going to talk about some of this for just a minute, okay? So first of all, you need to understand the difference between equality versus equity. Okay, we talk a lot about equality, gender equality, which is great, but we need to, before we discuss these specific strategies that we can employ, we need to talk about equality and equity, okay? Because our aim is to ensure that men and women benefit equally from development. And you may have noticed that in this talk, I am always talking about women and constraints of women. And if we're talking about men and women, but I'm actually talking about women a lot. And the main reason for that is that the starting point of the person is very important. So when we talk about equality, if you look at one side of the screen, you see equality. Each person received the same benefit, but is each one of them benefiting actually? Are they enjoying it? Are they enjoying the development that's coming from this aid? They're not. So on the other side of the screen, you see equity. And equity means that you have to level out the playing field by creating the conditions for achieving gender equality. Okay, and this is the base. This is something you need to know. Okay, and I'm not going to talk about the project cycle because time is too short. I am going to talk about some of the things that need to be done. So when we talk about gender and development approach, one of the main things is to go into the community, go in to see the beneficiaries or the potential beneficiaries of the program, of the project, of the development that you want to propose, and to do a study of what's going on in that community, what's going on in the home, what's going on in the community. Who does what, okay, who controls what, who has influence, what are the roles of the men and the men and the women, what are the needs of the women and the men. And a gender analysis, I like to say that it's a little bit more than intuition, because a lot of times we use our intuition. We know that there is gender inequality, but we don't really define it, okay? And it's a little bit less than science, okay? Science is using very specific scientific tools. So a gender analysis is somewhere between these two, okay? And the second thing that you need to do is a needs assessment. And remember, we talked about the practical needs and the strategic needs, okay? So you have to identify what are the constraints and the opportunities, and you need to take the data separately from the men and the women in the community, not just go in, talk to a head of a household and get the data, okay? So here are two, I'm going to show you just two tools that we use. One is a time use chart. Earlier, I told you that women work on an average of 20 hours more than men. That's because they take upon themselves the responsibility for working outside the home and also inside the home. And inside the home, the work hours are very long and very rigorous, you know this. So when we chart out the time use and who's doing what, then we can also try, and it's a first step to try and understand the community and the people in the community and what they are doing, what their life actually looks like. And then you can, it helps you design a better program and a better intervention. And the same goes for the access and control of the resources in the community and in the home. Okay, so when we know who controls what, who has access to what, then we also know what the power relations are. And then we can also design a program that can enable us to use this knowledge to introduce the program in the best way possible and to achieve the best results. So let me just very briefly go over what did we learn today? What did we talk about? So we talked about what gender is, and we talked mainly that gender is socially constructed. And we talked about gender terminology, that we talked about sex versus gender, gender stereotypes, gender norms in society, what is a gender identity, gender roles, socialization, and how we are conditioned into the roles that society designates for us. We talked about the gender cycle and how disparities are formed and then perpetuated. Then we talked about different approaches to women in development and how we eventually reached the gender and development approach, which takes into account the roles, the different roles and the different needs of men and women in the society. We talked about why it is important to integrate gender. We talked about some statistics, and we showed that the gender inequality is very real and very existent, and how sustainable development involves addressing these disparities. And finally, we took a very, very brief look at how to integrate gender, about gender mainstreaming, evaluation, and needs assessment. Okay, and so basically, how do you proceed from here? And the first step is to go into the community and to ask the right questions, basically. And here you need to know what are the different roles that men and women have in the project, how the project will affect them differently, will both men and women realistically be able to participate and to benefit, and how might differential participation of men and women affect the program activities, and how can the project contribute to gender equity and reduce gender disparities. So that was as fast as I could do it. I hope I didn't speak too fast. And so let me stop the sharing now. Hold on a second.
Your upper
I'm
part.
sorry, I don't see the stop share. Wait, okay, here it is. Okay. Any questions?
Wow, Tammy, first of all, bravo, bravo.
I rushed through it, didn't I?
A bit, but I think we feel much more empowered now.
Okay.
So thank you. Wow, it was a wonderful introduction to this interesting subject. I suppose we could have a few more lectures about that and discussions. Well, I say there are not many questions. There is one question for the moment, I think. But before we answer the question, I would like to put in the chat, maybe people have to leave, I don't know. I am putting in the chat at the moment the links of our Facebook page and our YouTube page. I think many people mistake the time difference, and they came in very late. So don't worry, we will have the video on in our YouTube page, so you will be able to see the lecture again. So please write the addresses and have them with you. Anyway, those who can stay a bit longer, maybe we go to this question. Tammy, you mentioned very short, but Alexander Morados asked, what do you think is the role of social media to further empower of women in agriculture, and for sure, especially those in the rural areas and economically challenged countries?
For sure. Okay, so social media, not just social media, everything having to do with the digitalization of information, everything having to do with access to the internet, to different kinds of applications are a huge, huge leapfrog. It opens the world to men and to women. So first of all, of course, there are also disparities with the access to the smartphone itself and to the internet. So let's start with that. But putting that aside, the social media enables women and women's groups to organize, to create new communities, not having to do just with their geographic location, and having to do with enabling extension systems, extension workers to reach out and to share information in a new way, in a very to very huge crowds. You know, in one of my other specializations is actually extension services, and in many countries the ratio between farmers and extension agents is 1,500 to 1, 5,000 to 1 sometimes, and so that extension agent is not always able to reach everyone. So when we talk now about digitalization of the services and of the information, all of a sudden it's open in a brand new way. And so when you have, let's say, communities that you can rely on sharing information, sharing problems, sharing solutions with other women or with other farmers, with farmers associations, professional groups, not only relying on the visit of an extension agent occasionally or never. So yes, I think that social media is a huge contributor. I think it's a game changer. And I think that when we look at in another, 3-5 years at the data, then I think that we're going to see huge changes as well. So.
Thank you, Tammy. Well, there is another question. Interesting. Do you think will development in one region, let's say Babatunde is asking us or telling us, development is happening at different stages globally. Well, you can see actually the chat, no? Can the subject of gender mainstreaming be achieved at the same pace in all regions of the world? Will development in our region meaningfully influence development in another region? I suppose, yes.
Okay, well, maybe it's not in the same pace, or maybe it's not in the same way exactly, but it was very important for me to share with you the situation in Israel, because Israel, we like to use ourselves as a model country. We are a model society, model country, but look at the disparities that exist here as well. So no, it won't be in the same rate, it won't be in the same way, but everybody should be working and contributing towards making it happen. So let me just say that, like, I believe, I'm very strong believer that I showed you that it happens from childbirth. So from birth. Okay, so I would like to encourage every single one of you to first look in your own home, in your own relationships, and what is happening, how you are raising your own children, how you are relating to your colleagues, to your men, and to the men and women that you are working with, or to the men and women who are working for you, and make the change that you can make, okay, in the organization or in your home, and I know that each one of you can make some kind of a difference. If it's in increasing awareness, if it's in putting in place new regulations, if it's in taking the time to do this gender analysis in order to understand what exactly is happening and to go to the root of the causes when you are implementing any kind of an enterprise or a project or a program. So maybe not in the same rate, but yes, it has to happen. It should happen.
I would like to tell everybody, maybe we have here a lot of Mashaf alumni, and maybe we have a lot of new people joining us. So I would like to tell everybody that we have a very big Mashaf family all over the world in your countries. So maybe if you are leading any project, maybe it would be interesting to contact our embassy in your country in order to check if there are Mashaf alumni who maybe they can help you. Many professionals have been here taking part in different courses related to the subject. Remember, we are three centers, three Mashaf centers. We are dealing mainly with agriculture. Carmel Golda Meir Center in Haifa, they are dealing with entrepreneurship, with gender issues, with community issues. And we have a third center dealing with education. So all the three together, we are speaking about development and mainly rural development. As you are invited to contact the embassies to find Mashaf alumni, professionals in these subjects that could be part of your projects. And hopefully those who haven't been here, hopefully in the very short future, will be able to join our activities and turn into Mashaf alumni. So I think we have to take a picture.
Okay.
It would be great if you open your cameras for
If you can, yes,
a
please.
few minutes, for sure. Please open cameras. And let's do yeah, wow, that's nice to see you.
I'm so happy to see so many men in this lecture. I salute you all for being here and for hearing me. Thank you.
We will change the world. Yes, we will do it. Nice. I want more people in the chat, with pictures, with cameras open. Should be full. Everybody smiling? Yeah.
Got it?
Yeah, I think we will also unmute. So, Tammy, again, thank you very much for this first lecture. I think we will invite you to give continuation lecture.
Okay, thank you.
Again, the lecture will be uploaded to our YouTube page, okay? Stay in contact, please. We are now publishing all this information, the different webinars through our Facebook page, mainly, okay? Now, sorry, many people asking for certificates. It's impossible, okay? We cannot do that. I'm very sorry. We are not giving certificates for one online lecture. Sorry, really. You have to come to a course, to a training program here in Israel, or
online. So maybe we will do a course online, maybe. Don't promise.
That's nice. That's nice. News for very specific professionals on pest and disease specialists, agronomists. Tomorrow, at the same time, 3 o'clock, we will have a lecture presenting one system for pest and disease management based on artificial intelligence. You are invited. On our Facebook page, you have the link for registering. Next week, if you have friends who speak French, we will have Tammy, but this time with a lecture in French with a very similar topic on gender integration in development projects. And what else? We are so happy to have you with us today, and hopefully we will meet again for a next online meeting, online lecture, online discussion. And we wish you all the best. Take care. And let's work together for a better world. Huh?
Yes. Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you for being with us.
Excuse